The topic today is the Trinity River Audubon Center's historical, cultural, and environmental significance. And your speaker is Jake Poinsett. Jake Poinsett is a program manager at the Trinity River Audubon Center and leads environmental education programs and habitat restoration projects and coordinates volunteer groups. He is an avid birder and natural lover and enjoys building a bridge for other people to find their aha moments in nature. Thank you, Jake Poinsett, for joining us. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Faye. Thank you, everybody, for having me, and thank you for everyone who has joined us. I'm excited to be here. I hope everyone else is excited as well. My name is Jake Poinsett, Program Manager at the Trinity River Audubon Center, and my job is to build a bridge to make sure people can build their own relationships with nature. And something that I love doing. I love being outdoors and just enjoying the natural world and everything that it provides. And where I work at the Trinity River Audubon Center, there are a lot of opportunities to do that. And that has not always been the case. The land where our Audubon Center is located has a lot of history and some not so good. So it's really, really nice to know that we have these green spaces that are around now for people to enjoy, people like you and I, and also for wildlife to depend on because it provides all the habitat requirements they need to survive. So this is a beautiful picture of the Audubon Center right here with one of our little prairie areas right outside of it. And I think it's a good time for us to jump right in. Let's begin. Now, I've been doing a lot of these virtual presentations for a while now, and we found that these are our Zoom best practices or WebEx best practices for this instance. And we make sure that everyone's camera is turned off, make sure your microphone is muted, and feel free to ask questions using the chat box at any time. We'll make sure that at the end, there will be time for Q&A, and I'll try to address each question. Hopefully I have an answer, and if not, we'll have a good conversation. We can try to figure things out together. Make sure your computer's sound is up so you can hear me speaking. I'll do my best to speak clearly. I get a little excited with certain topics, so I'll try not to just, start mumbling and fumbling around. I'll do my best to speak clearly. And make sure your computer's video is on because there's some really beautiful pictures taken by excellent photographers throughout this presentation, like this one right here, Exhibit a downy woodpecker by Keith McCullough. He's one of our Audubon Photography Award winners. We have a award or a photography contest every year of fellow nature lovers who go out and try to photograph birds in their natural habitats. And this is a common bird, the downy woodpecker. If you ever see a woodpecker in your backyard in the DFW area, chances are it's either a downy or a red-bellied woodpecker. The downies are the smaller ones. And this is just a cool picture. You can see their eyes just peering on either side of that old growth. They have those really neat, that's a term called zygodactyl claws or on their feet that allow them to grip trees up and down. So just a really neat picture. So working at the Trinity River Audubon Center means I work for the National Audubon Society. And the word Audubon at this point is kind of synonymous with birds. And we have our own story, how this organization came to be. And it actually was created many, many, many years after our namesake passed away, John James Audubon. And we kind of named the organization to emulate or to pay homage, rather, to the important work that John James Audubon did for bird conservation and just awareness and the importance and the biodiversity of birds in North America. He was a naturalist who traveled around North America, cataloging and studying the birds and their habitats, and he was a wonderful illustrator who would paint and draw each bird he would find to document them. And he has a really great piece of work called Birds of North America. And there's tons of Audubon prints out there. I'm sure everyone has seen one before, even if you didn't even know it was an Audubon print. That's what he was famous for. So our organization was named after him to pay homage to the great work he did for birds. But the first Audubon Society wasn't founded until 1896, nearly 100 years after he passed away. And it was founded in Boston, Massachusetts. And the reason it was founded is because birds like this one right here, the great egret, were hunted for a fashion known as plume hats. People would hunt the great egrets just for one feather. And these feathers that are displayed right here in this picture are called aigrette feathers. And they're some of their breeding plumage feathers. People would hunt them, put a feather in a cap. And this became such popular high fashion with the high society types that these birds and other birds were almost wiped off the face of the map just to put a feather in a cap. So the two women got together, Nina B. Hall and Harriet Hemingway, and they said that, you know what, there needs to be an alternative. We can still appreciate these birds without shooting them to put a feather in a cap. And these gatherings became so popular that they called themselves the Audubon Society. And they got together and word got out, so other Audubon societies started to pop up all around the Northeast. And together, they were able to pass the Audubon Model Law of 1901, which actually banned the hunting of these birds. So this early grassroots advocacy was really, really important in the environmental conservation movement. It became so popular that there was a national association of these Audubon societies all over the place. Later on, fast forward to 1940, we were turned into the National Audubon Society that we are today. And we're still a leader in conservation with advocacy. We're a part of the environmental conservation conversation in Washington, D.C., and your local governments and state governments. And also with conservation, we have boots on the ground scientists and naturalists like myself that are constantly managing and restoring habitats for birds and other wildlife, and education, things like this. We like to just teach people about why these places are important and why they should be open and accessible for everybody. Ooh, let me go back one. And as you can see, we began in Boston, and now we are everywhere. Our influence is nationwide, and it's actually up and down the Americas. We have some organization, or we have some groups in South America, because birds do not know borders. Must be nice. They get to travel wherever they want, no passports needed. So a lot of these birds that winter in South and Central America, they need voices to support them as well. So Audubon is all over North and South America. But here in North America, you can see all these different dots on the map. Chapters are volunteer-led, where people get together and they have their own bird walks, they have their own clubs, they do lots of fun, cool things in their own community to protect birds and go bird watching, talk about bird feeders, bird seed, native plants. You can think of it, you name it, your local Audubon center, or your local Audubon chapter does it. And of course, we have our state offices. You know, I work directly with Audubon, Texas, and then our nature centers and our sanctuaries. In Texas, we have 3 nature centers: the Trinity River Audubon Center in Dallas, where I work, the Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center in Cedar Hill, and the Mitchell Lake Audubon Center in San Antonio. And the center's job is to be a place for people to come out and enjoy nature. Again, it's something that should be open and accessible for everybody. We do field trips for students, bird walks, people come out and explore the trails on their own. There's a variety of things for everyone. The Audubon in Texas began a little bit later, 1899, and since then we still are one of the leading voices of bird conservation. The reason Audubon in Texas started is because of our migratory birds that pass through the Gulf. You know, for example, the ruby-throated hummingbird is a small little bird that migrates twice a year, and they have to fly across the Gulf of Mexico. And this one tiny little bird, they migrate all by themselves, nearly 2,000 miles every year. And they need to go through the Gulf of Mexico. And as soon as they hit land, the Texas coast, they need these stopping points for them to have access to food, water, shelter, and space, a place to take a break, a place to relax. So our beginning of Audubon, Texas was to preserve all these coastal islands and these dunes and different maritime forests, maritime habitats to make sure that birds have a place to stay. And of course, where they can breed and they can winter. And that started to spread inland, because not just the coast is important for birds, there are tons of other species that utilize other parts of this humongous state. So Audubon, Texas started on the coast, and now we've moved all the way in to the rest of our state. We invite everybody to join our conservation movement, because there's something for everyone. Speaking of moving interior of Texas, we live in an area known as the Blackland Prairie ecoregion, which is very important for birds, very important for a variety of wildlife, and important for us because we are now a part of this ecosystem. The Blackland Prairie ecoregion is intrinsically beautiful. I mean, look at all these beautiful wildflowers here. A fun, fancy word for a wildflower is a forb. So later on today, you can tell everybody that we talked about forbs. It's a fun, fancy word. And we're going to dive deep into where we are located within Texas. But what exactly is an ecoregion? I'm sure everyone's heard the term many, many times before. And by definition, it is a relatively large unit of land or water containing a geographically distinct assemblage of species, natural communities, and environmental conditions. So if you look at this map of Texas broken up into different colors, we are that purple strip to the west. There's the eastern portion. That's also a part of our ecoregion, but it's broken up by another ribbon of habitat. The purple is the Blackland Prairie. And being a prairie, it was dominated by tons of native plants that were grasses and forbs. And our soil type is what allows these plants to thrive here, as opposed to the soil found in the coastal prairie, where you see along the coast. We have more of a clay-like gumbo soil. So some of the plants here can also grow in the coastal prairie, but we have some that are unique or endemic just to this area. It's significant because understanding what native plants thrive here can help us learn in turn what wildlife depends on these plants, what native plants we can grow in our own yards with little to no care. It's really easy to have native plants thrive in your own backyard as opposed to tropical plants or things transported from elsewhere because they're used to our growing zone. So that's better for the environment, less water, it's used to our soil types, less care. They can just plant it and let it go. And again, now that we live here, there are really, really valuable ecosystem services and functions that the Blackland Prairie provides us. And we'll dive deep into that later on too. As you saw on the map, the Blackland Prairie is originally from the Red River, the border of Oklahoma and Texas, all the way down to San Antonio. And that included the eastern DFW area. So Dallas County, a little bit of Tarrant County to the west, where I live in Ellis County, the northern counties around that, the ones a little more to the south. So it was a really large area that was taken up by what people call a sea of grass. But it really wasn't just a sea of grass. It's a type of tall grass prairie because the amount of rain that we get is much more than those from the short grass prairies. So since we do have more rain compared to the other parts of the Great Plains, the grasses that grow here get taller. But we don't get enough rain that it produces soil types and proper growing habitats for lots and lots and lots of trees, except for different areas. So in the tall grass prairie, dominated by those grasses and forbs, we have what we're called the big four grasses: big blue stem, little blue stem, switchgrass, and yellow Indian grass. Those are like the main ingredients to a tall grass prairie. And there's a variety of other types of species. I know a recent survey said that in a really healthy, pristine climax Blackland Prairie ecosystem, there's over 1,000 species that are thriving in one area. But when you start to move around away from the upland parts of the prairie, in the riparian forests, so the lowlands that are around the rivers and creeks and lakes, you're going to find forested areas because the soil type is different, the growing areas are different. You'll find trees like black willow trees and eastern cottonwoods. Some of these areas can be humongous and they create these large bottomland hardwood forests. And other areas are little oak mottes. So like an oak mott is an area that's like an island of trees that are scattered about the prairie. Some areas that are like a savanna. There's some trees scattered about with most of the understory just being grasses and forbs. So it isn't really that sea of grass that people imagined many, many years ago. There are large tracts of only grasses and forbs, but we still have trees in a prairie. Unfortunately, less than 1% of this ecosystem remains intact, which makes it one of the most endangered in the entire country. And there are many, many factors that contribute to this. Early settlers came and they saw the soil here and they thought to themselves, I can grow whatever I want. That's exactly what happened. So it was converted into monocultural cropland. As our habitat started to grow, we need to provide more food for the settlers who arrived here. And also, a big part of Texas culture is ranching. So there are things that evolved with the prairie, this large charismatic megafauna like our bison, and they would graze while moving around from one place to the prairie to let it rejuvenate. But when you put up fences for cattle, the grass can't rejuvenate. Majority of its biomass is under the ground, so it evolved with the bison, so it can come back fresh and strong in its next growing season. But too much pressure from cattle within the fenced-in area pretty much eliminated all the grasses from overgrazing. And of course, urbanization. DFW is just doing this. We're just eating up everything in our path. We're just a bunch of cattle, just eating up all the grass. So many, many things contribute to this place, to the fact that this is now one of the most endangered ecosystems in the entire country. So that's why it's important to have places like the Trinity River Audubon Center in our location, because the Blackland Prairie ecoregion is in the middle of what we call the Central Migration Flyway, or the Central Flyway. It is the largest of all the flyways found in North America, and a flyway is basically like an imaginary highway in the sky. And this is how birds migrate through the magnetic forces, the magnetic fields of the Earth pull, and also from stars above. So they know that traditionally where their breeding grounds are, and they start to migrate south in this imaginary highway down to their wintering grounds. And there's what is known as staging areas where birds stop at the same places every year to make sure they have places to refuel, take a break, this, that, and the other. So basically, habitats like the Trinity River Audubon Center, like the Buc-ee's for birds, we all stop at Buc-ee's on our road trip. These little staging areas like the Audubon Center are Buc-ee's along the Central Flyway. But the largest of the migration flyways from the boreal forests and the Arctic tundra all the way up to the northern parts of Canada down towards the Gulf of Mexico. Nearly 2 billion birds migrate through this great state. That's more than any other state. We have more species of bird found in Texas than any other state as well, over 650. About 1/3 of all birds are migratory, or about 1/3 of all migratory birds pass through Texas. That includes 333 species. That is a lot. Now, it's not just a place for them to stop and refuel and retool, but many of these birds breed here. So that's another reason why it's important to create these habitats for them or save these habitats. Some that are dependent on these specific habitat types, like the Blackland Prairie, birds like our dickcissel, the grasshopper sparrow, northern harrier, they're very specific. They're habitat specialists. So if these grasslands were no longer here, if the specific big four grasses that provide the insects that the birds eat or provide the nesting materials that the birds need, then these birds would have nowhere else to go. So a lot of these animals are depending on the things that we can save and provide for them here in Texas. But it's not just about the birds. It's not just about all the beautiful wildlife we love to enjoy and study, like this American river otter. We now live in Dallas. We now live in the Blackland Prairie ecoregion. And like all other things, there's life begins in and around water, right? And here we have tons of life along the river. The Trinity River is one of the most valuable resources in our country. It's the only river that starts and ends right here in Texas. So the Trinity River is extremely valuable. It is today, and it always has been, for wildlife and for people. So there's lots of life along the river. Historically, this area was utilized by multiple Native American tribes, multiple indigenous groups of people. There was never just one tribe that utilized what we would call present-day Dallas. Kind of like what Dallas is today. It was a place for people to stop and move elsewhere, to take a break, to come and meet and create commerce. And just like our DFW airport, one of the largest airports, one of the busiest airports in the country, that's what it was here historically. It wasn't just one tribe that utilized this area. They would come up to the river, they would use the river to use for trade and a lot of stopping points. And originally the river was known as the Arkakosa, and that's Caddoan language. And there's still debates on what exactly that means, what Arkakosa meant in their language. But there's many conversations now that we should change the name of the river from the Trinity River back to Arkakosa. So that's up to you to decide. Should it be its original name or should it be what we call it now? But three of the major tribes that would utilize this area were the Wichita. They were an agricultural group of people, and they would come down to the river, and that's where they would fish as well, and that's where they would take a lot of resources from the river, and they would use their canoes to go and trade with the Comanche, which are a little more to the west. The Comanche were a nomadic tribe, and they would come towards the river as well. And then the Caddo people who were more to the east, and they also had their villages. They were not nomadic like the Comanche were. So all these different tribes would utilize the Trinity River. And then later on in the 1700s, there's a French explorer, Robert de La Salle. He also came across the river for the same reason that many Native American tribes did, for commerce, for trade. And he saw that all these different Native American tribes utilizing it and using their canoes, and he named it the River of Canoes. And then later on, Alfonso de Leon Spanish explorer, he started to make permanent shelters, permanent communities along the river. And he wanted to give it its name for the feast that was coming up. So they called it the Trinidad, the feast that was in 3 days. And they later, in turn, called it the Trinity. We're going to meet at the Trinity in 3 days. The Trinity River ended up being its official name. So many, many different cultures, many different groups of people utilize this river, and that's still the case today. But fast forward to where the river is in the 1900s, Dallas was booming. Dallas still is booming. We're still growing. But it grew so fast from its early humble stages of the DFW area that it became a very polluted place. In fact, many people call it the River of Death. And it was due to the fast urbanization, unsafe and unhealthy building practices, unsafe and unhealthy industry and farming practices, a lot of runoff, eliminating all the different habitats like the riparian forest, pretty much provided easy access for things to run off and just flow into the river. Stormwater runoff is also something that still happens constantly that adds to the poor quality of waterways. So hindsight being 2020, we didn't realize how quickly and how bad we were polluting the river. In fact, there were literally slaughterhouses next to the river in the DFW area, and they would just allow all the waste to just go off into the river. Out of sight, out of mind. But as we know, things go downstream. So again, the only river that starts and ends in Texas, it begins in North Texas, it goes all the way down to the Gulf. So this became a very, very polluted place. But luckily, in 2018, after many, many efforts and years of trying to clean up the river and changing our practices, the city of Dallas called it deemed it safe for swimming and safe for recreational practice. But it took that long, until 2018. And to this day, 50 to 80% of the river is actually recycled wastewater. So the things that we use in our houses every day, in our businesses, what we do when we go out to have fun and recreate, majority, either half or more than half of the Trinity River is recycled wastewater. But you can look at that in either a positive or a negative, because if it wasn't for that wastewater, many parts of the Trinity River could just be totally barren during times of drought. So the people downstream of us probably rely on this wastewater. It eventually goes into reservoirs and becomes cleaned and processed, but we want to make sure that it does do that because lots of things live in the water too. And then right here on the banks of the Trinity River, where we're located right now, when it was very polluted, when people were dumping here and just not treating this valuable resource with the respect it deserves, the same thing was happening to the land right next to it. We call it the Deepwood landfill. And it's actually the largest illegal landfill in Texas history. If you took all the trash that was dumped at this illegal dump site, it would be taller, it would be just as tall as the Empire State Building. That's how much trash was dumped here illegally. It was a piece of property owned by an individual, and he pretty much would just allow people to pay him to dump their household trash, dump their trash from their businesses, dump their trash from building things and anything you could think of. There were tires there. There were tire fires that lasted for months. There were chemicals, housing material or household trash, all of it just stacked and loaded into this illegal dump site. And there were many, many years where they're trying to get this dump site okayed by the city. And this is when the city owned the area, or I'm sorry, this part of the city in South Dallas was, I think it was Pleasant Grove. And then the communities started to change. And then afterwards, when they noticed it was predominantly minorities, the city allowed this person to do this. They gave him the permit to do it. So it was legal by terms of the city of Dallas. They didn't mind anymore. Once they noticed that it was no longer a community that they were wanting to be a part of, they allowed this to happen. And finally, after years and years and years, people like the neighborhood who are in this picture here, after complaining to the city, saying, I see there's tire fires, trucks going in and out every single night, dumping things. It's not safe to breathe outside. The city just kept turning a blind eye. This happened from the 80s all the way up to 1999, when finally Judge Barefoot Sanders sued the city, or found the city and the landowner guilty under federal law, because it is a federal crime to do what they were doing. But the city of Dallas allowed it. It took 3 years to clean up this dump, 3 full years to clean it up. and they created a capped landfill nearby to try to stash all the excess waste, excess trash. If you'd like to learn more about what happened at this location, the Deepwood landfill, there's a really powerful documentary called Out of Deepwood. And thanks to the local citizens who are just sick of this environmental injustice, they create a movement for environmental justice. So it's a great watch. It's definitely worth the 22 minutes long that it is. And then after it was cleaned up, the National Audubon Society and the city of Dallas began to restore this place to create a valuable resource. And that's exactly where the Trinity River Audubon Center is today, on the Deepwood landfill. It took many, many years, 3 years, to remove all the trash, and we're still restoring its habitats back to its native state. For lots of wildlife, for birds like this beautiful animal, the prothonotary warbler, this is a bird that utilizes the habitats here in what we call the Great Trinity Forest. And if we weren't able to restore this habitat from a disgusting dump back to its original space, this bird would no longer be anywhere near North Texas. There are places where its range is completely wiped off the map. But thanks to our citizens who are in South Dallas and said, we need to put a stop to this and bring it back to nature, now we can find birds like the prothonotary warbler here again. The Deepwood landfill and present-day Trinity River Audubon Center are located in what we call the Great Trinity Forest. If you see this right here, this green that goes along the Trinity River and out toward the floodplains, that's what we call the Great Trinity Forest, and it's actually the largest urban bottomland hardwood forest in the country. That's a mouthful, but it's 6,000 acres. So that's the equivalent of 6,000 football fields. That's how large this place is. And it's right here in Dallas. For the longest time, it was just a dumping ground. Deepwood landfill is not the only place where this was happening. People were just treating this forest as a place to get rid of things they didn't want, out of sight, out of mind. But after what happened, thanks to Judge Barefoot Sanders, the forest started to be cleaned up. And now it's not just a place to, dump your trash, out of sight, out of mind. Now it's a place to recreate and see beautiful nature and have pride in your community. And located right here in the beautiful area of South Dallas. There's a mosaic of mixed hardwood forests. So a bottomland forest, like I mentioned before, is a type of wooded habitat that grows along waterways. The types of trees that grow here are able to withstand occasional flooding. So we have our American elm trees, our bald cypress, black willows. They can live in standing water, so they can be totally inundated with swampy water at certain periods of time. That makes it a bottomland forest. And hardwood forest, because most of the trees here are deciduous hardwood trees. But that's not the only plant communities found here. Again, like we mentioned before, this is the Blackman Prairie plant community. So scattered about little pocket prairies of grasslands, and around the surrounding area, tons of grasslands. There's natural springs that provide beautiful bubbling water. So it's a really, really wonderful natural treasure here in our own city. This is a picture of one of the trails here at the Audubon Center going through the forest. And this is extremely crucial habitat in an increasingly urban area. It creates a corridor for wildlife. Many animals migrate up the river, not just birds. A lot of fish swim up. A lot of mammals follow the river. So having these wooded habitats gives them safe space to navigate. And of course, it adds in our air quality improvement. If you look at the air quality in Dallas compared to some of our other cities in our state and our country, it's fairly good. And plants like trees and grasses and other plants, as a byproduct of creating what they need to survive, they are absorbing potential pollutants from the air. So having these large green spaces actually help us. Places like the Great Trinity Forest are the lungs of the city, and also they're the liver. They're providing us with oxygen by absorbing potential pollutants from the atmosphere. So these large areas of green space really provide great air quality for us. And they're the sponge of our city. The Trinity River naturally floods. It's a mighty, mighty river that sometimes can almost be dry when going through times of drought. Then when we get heavy rainfall, it leaves its banks. So the plant communities that are found along the river, they act like a sponge. The network of roots and detritus that is on the ground actually gives the water somewhere to go, instead of ending up in our homes or where we go to school or we go to work. It soaks it up, lets it leach down into the alluvial soils and just onto the groundwater underneath of us, and eventually recharge back into the river. And when it does go back to the river, these plants, specifically the wetland plants, they absorb any potential pollutants before they get back to the water. So this is our sponge that keeps the river clean. And of course, there's endless recreation opportunities. I mean, this trail is a fun trail to go down. We see white-tailed deer, tons of birds, there's bobcats, there's coyotes. And general rules, if you don't bother them, they won't bother you. People always ask, well, are we safe to walk in the forest? We are the biggest, scariest animals out here. As long as you don't bother the wildlife, they will not bother you. People go fishing, they go birding, there's a place to go bike riding. And you can do all of these things at the Trinity River Audubon Center, minus bike riding, because we are the gateway to the Great Trinity Forest. There are 5 miles of trail to explore through a variety of habitats. Our forested areas, the prairie that we're actively restoring, our ephemeral wetlands. The picture we're looking at right here, it's a seasonal wetland that's fed by rainwater and from overflow of the river. So sometimes it's totally dry, bone dry, and other times it's a beautiful pond that is teeming with life. We have tons of programs for students and for the public. We lead field trips from kindergarten to college to learn about local ecology and the flora and fauna found in our area and why the river and its habitats are so important for us. We lead bird walks, edible plant walks, sunset hikes, owl prowls, and we always invite people to come and volunteer with us, be part of our team. There's a lot of different things you can do. And then, as mentioned before, I'm a big bird nerd. I love to go birding. Nearly 300 species of bird have been documented here. Being on a central flyway, it's a crucial spot, a crucial stopping point for so many different species. The Harris's sparrow, if we live in North Texas, there's a lot of things to be proud of, but one of them is the Harris's sparrow. It's the only endemic breeding bird of Canada. So every single Harris's sparrow born is a Canadian. And the only place where they spend their winter is in a short little range of southern Canada to northern Texas. So people travel all around the world to North Texas to see this bird. And we get to see it every day. It's like, oh yeah, saw one yesterday. Oh well, big deal. But people travel all around the world just to see this bird. One of the popular programs that we provide is our service learning program, where we work with colleges like University of Texas Dallas and University of North Texas Dallas, where we can have students be a part of our prairie restoration. A variety of tasks such as our habitat surveys, where we go out and survey the plant community to figure out what native plants are thriving here, learn about their specific niche, their ecological role in the greater ecosystem here, what insects are relying on it as a larval host, what birds are eating the insects, what animals browse or graze on it. And then we also have to do our surveys to find what invasive species are here. We are no stranger to invasive species at the Trinity River Audubon Center. Like everywhere in Texas, we have Johnson grass, which is a very, very noxious weed, something that just thrives in any disturbed environment. If you live anywhere near Dallas, you see Johnson grass every single day of your life. And we help identify these different plants, the ones that are native, ones that are invasive, and then we find ways to remove these plants, sometimes with herbicide, sometimes without herbicide. We try many different techniques so we can teach people about ways they can manage properties, ways they can manage different plant communities. We do plant propagation, where they help collect seeds. They learn about different seed adaptations and seed functions from grasses and from forbs. And then they help us by putting them in the greenhouse, bumping them up from seed. And then also we separate by root division, by relocating certain plants. They get to learn about the different rhizomatic root systems from different species. And then the fun part, we get to put all this stuff in the ground, like you see in this picture above. We have these large mass plantings where students get to be a part of the restoration by putting the plants in their new home and just wishing them luck, hope they reproduce and make many, many new plants. And with each service learning program, there's tons of curriculum-based instruction. We get to talk during, before, and after to learn about prairie ecology, the different plant and animal biology and animal adaptations, what allows them to thrive in these prairie ecosystems, and how we can fit into this environment and with less of a footprint. So the themes of sustainability and environmental justice are very important right here at the Audubon Center, because we try to do everything in-house and make sure that the community is a part of it, because we are here thanks to our South Dallas community. And because we're here thanks to our South Dallas community, the building is completely LEED certified. So LEED is leadership in energy and environmental design. And the goal is to make sure that this building has little to no environmental impact, or the least amount of environmental impact possible. And we have our gold certification when we were created, and that's due to a variety of things, due to our remediation, the fact that we're restoring the habitats around us to go with the flow of the Trinity River, provide places for the water to go when it does overflow. We have all these ephemeral wetlands scattered about. We're restoring the landscape back to its native plant community. Our water use reduction, we have low flow toilets and sinks. We have our own wastewater leach field, so all of our wastewater goes to the leach field. And all of our construction materials are as low impact as possible. We have bamboo, one of the fastest growing sources of building material, bamboo floors. We have our concrete made out of fly ash, which is a byproduct of coal power plants or producing coal. So instead of letting it go to waste to a dump that this place once was, it turned into areas that help keep our building up. And then our daylighting and our views. These big, beautiful windows help keep our building either cool or keep our building warm, as well as our plant roof on top to minimize the heat island effect. And the windows are either slanted or they have decals on them to make sure that birds don't crash into them, because one of the major issues for birds is window collisions. Then, of course, we just talk about why this building is important and why or how people can do these things in their own homes, their own environments too. Because of what happened at Deepwood landfill here in South Dallas, and what it has turned into now, the Trinity River Audubon Center, we helped Dallas become the bird city, which I think we should all be proud of. Woo, go Dallas. We are in partnership with Texas Parks and Wildlife and Audubon, Texas, deemed a city safe for birds. It's because of the amount of green spaces that we have, and there's habitat management plans thanks to our City of Dallas employees, like our urban biologist, Brett Johnson, in partnership with lots of other organizations that care about the environment in Dallas. We're making sure that there are native plant communities and habitats and green spaces for people to explore and for wildlife to call home. And in turn, that helps with our ecotourism. That helps with our clean, fresh air. It helps with keeping our river clean. So it helps us to help the birds. And with all these different places and organizations, we teach people about why it's so great to be a bird city, why it's important to share the skies and share the habitats with our birds. Places or different plans, like our Lights Out Texas plan. So during migration, most birds fly at night. So as they are flying in the sky and they see Dallas all lit up, it kind of gets them discombobulated. So by turning your lights out at night, it allows the birds to have safe passage as they're flying through, instead of colliding into buildings when they see all the lights on. So all these different things have really helped turn Dallas into a bird city. And I invite you all to learn more of what you can do at your own homes, your own habitats, to be good neighbors to birds and keep Dallas as birdy as possible. Or you could join our team. Volunteer with us. Learn more about how you can be good stewards to our native ecosystem. Learn about the different plants and animals here, and try and jumpstart your career as a conservationist if you're interested, or just come out for fun. There's a variety of things that we have people help with, different tasks that people tackle. If you're into talking with the public, you can always work at our front desk. We have tons of volunteers that just love to talk about the trails and what people saw and help check them in for programs and for just hiking around the day. You can help with our environmental education programs with students and with the public. If you're interested in just hiking the trails and maintaining it for all of our visitors, we have trail maintenance programs where we get you trained up with plant ID and which ones to remove, which ones to cut back. And even more intense is our habitat restoration, where we put on muck boots and we go out into the field together. So there's a variety of things you can do to be a part of our team, and we invite everybody to join our flock. And if you're interested, there's my email and my phone number. Feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call, and we can get you up on our team. So thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about our history, our cultural significance, and our environmental significance too. And while we are going to answer some questions, I believe there may be a poll we can have everybody answer as well or participate in to learn a little bit more about your interests and what you'd like to learn more about or how you can be a part of our team.
Thank you so much, Jake. That was absolutely wonderful, very informative. I knew nothing about birds, and so now I feel like I know at least a little bit. So thank you for that. So we're going to give a chance for some people to ask some questions. Lori, thank you. She did post the survey, so if everyone would please fill that out. It looks like Barbara has a question for you, Jake. So Barbara's asking, can you speak to SpaceX's impact on the Central Flyway? How much of the Great Trinity River Forest is privately owned? And of the publicly owned land, what municipalities own portions? So that might be a couple of them, but yeah, please go for it.
Great questions, Barbara. And regarding SpaceX, we have our Audubon, Texas team that deals with policy and advocacy. And they're a part of the conversation on how we can make SpaceX as environmentally friendly as possible, because it can be a detrimental impact when there's large developments going on in these bird habitats, because SpaceX won't be too far away from really crucial national wildlife refuges and state parks and private property that is really important for tons of different animal species. So Audubon and some other organizations are going to try to work with SpaceX to make it as minimal impact as possible, because without any intervention, without any help, then it can be very detrimental to wildlife for sure. And I'm sure that SpaceX knows this, and hopefully they already are trying to find ways to make it as environmentally friendly as possible, because there's a fine line of, we need development, we need advancement, we need things to continue our cultures, and but also we can't leave everything else behind, right? So we need to try to make sure that we work with SpaceX, and I know our policy team's doing their best to do that. And
yeah, the next one was, how much of the Great Trinity River Forest is privately owned?
That I'm not too sure on numbers. I know in Texas, 95% of our land is privately owned, and that's a very large number for a very large state. But a lot of the property in the Great Trinity Forest is owned by the city of Dallas. In fact, the Trinity River Audubon Center, where we're located, 120 acres that we manage of the 6,000 is technically owned by the city of Dallas, and they just hired the National Audubon Society to take care of it. And there are other places like the Joppa Preserve. I know there is an equestrian location. There are some other places like Big Spring. All this is owned by the city of Dallas. And what other municipalities own portions? I think there are some. I think most of it is owned by the city of Dallas, but also with partnership with other organizations. Like, I think the Nature Conservancy is trying to help with some of the locations. The Texas Master Naturalists is a really great organization, and they basically manage Big Spring totally on their own. So the city of Dallas kind of works with different organizations to help manage specific properties. But that's a good question about what is privately owned, because I'm not too sure. And you're right, privet is everywhere. That's one of our other species that we're constantly trying to maintain. And Johnson grass got here because it was something people planted due to hindsight being 2020. We knew that removing all the prairie grasses aided in our erosion issue and our water quality issues. So they planted something to help with that. But in turn, we found that it will just completely create a monoculture, outcompete anything else that was trying to come back. And then we also found out that it can create a toxic amount of cyanide if animals are only eating Johnson grass. So not a fan. But then also Chinese privet was planted here because it was a beautiful ornamental that people found attractive. And the birds evidently found the berries delicious. And even though I'm a bird nerd, sometimes they make our job a little hard because they're helping the privet go everywhere.
Okay, it looks like Lori has a question. She says, I'm intrigued by the correlations between ecosystem services and birds. Can you explain?
Sure. So the Blackland Prairie ecosystem services for people would be the erosion control. We do go through these severe droughts and severe wind events, and without the network of roots holding onto the soil, things would just blow, wash, and erode away. And the same thing when we have heavy rain events. The network of roots and different forbs and grasses help catch it and seep it down to the water table underneath of us. And also, these prairie grasses create a carbon sink. So just like trees, they absorb potential pollutants from the atmosphere as a byproduct, or while they're expelling oxygen, creating their own food, and they can actually store more carbon underneath the ground than trees do, because the majority of their biomass is underneath the ground. So birds, specifically granivorous species, like our sparrows and our finches, they help these plants reproduce by eating their seeds, and then it's gross, but we all do it, pooping them out elsewhere. So they're helping these prairies reproduce. And also some of our insectivores, birds like our flycatchers, our warblers, all these different birds that eat insects, they're like free pest control, pesticide free. So they're helping to keep our populations of insects in check. Many of these species would be considered pests for farmers. Like 96% of birds, terrestrial breeding birds, 96% of them feed their young caterpillars, even if it is a granivorous bird. So by the fact that they're eating so many insects, specifically caterpillars that munch and munch and munch on plants, they're helping keep these in check, specifically these potential crop destroying pests. So ecosystem services by the plant community, the habitat themselves, are really valuable and vital for people, but then adding birds into the equation makes it even more valuable.
Thank you. And I've actually got a question for you. So how do I create a bird-friendly environment, like in my own home or around my own home? Like, is it recommended? Like, I love having like the bird houses, and like, but is it harmful to have bird feed in there, or is it better to just kind of like just sit back?
That's a great question, and I also love having birdhouses. I have Eastern bluebird boxes in my house. They're fun to watch, and if you put one up, there's a chance to see these birds in the really crucial breeding periods of their life cycle. And you can put up bird feed too, which is always great. But I always recommend planting native plants because it's more sustainable, it's easier to have, and it'll introduce more birds, because not only will some birds eat the berries or birds like hummingbirds enjoy the nectar, but then it'll in turn invite native insects, which would be things that are using those plants as a larval host. So then other birds will come and eat the insects, or other birds will come and take the old growth from the native plants and weave a nest. And maybe they might take those plants and make a nest in their own yard or next to a park nearby. So by planting native plants, it's more than just here's some bird seed. It's here's everything else you need to survive in your habitat too.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we've got, I'll give everyone a chance to ask their questions. We've got two more. Have you played Wingspan, the board game? If so, do you recommend it?
My girlfriend just bought me Wingspan. It's the best game ever. So I do recommend it. And my friend, he has Wingspan on his, what's that? The Nintendo Switch. So there's also a Nintendo Switch version. But definitely recommend Wingspan if you're into board games. It's fun.
Okay, and then we have something from Casey. Local conservatories or natural land preserves also have volunteer opportunities to restore, preserve environments that are helpful for bird environments. So thank you, Casey, for the comment.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just Audubon. There are so many different organizations that you can become a part of in the Dallas area that are doing trash cleanups, wildlife surveys. There's tons of different things that you can do to help birds, because the phrase like a canary in a coal mine is a great example for birds and their importance to the environment, because they're a great indicator species. If we protect habitat for birds and specifically ones that are very niche to a specific habitat. In turn, you're creating habitat for so many other animals. So if you notice that these birds are starting to disappear, then we know there's something wrong with the environment.
Okay, thank you so much, Jake.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Hope everybody enjoyed it. And I hope everybody comes out and explores the Audubon Center and join me on a bird walk or just come out and hike on your own and come say hi.
Thank you. And sorry, it looks like we have one more question. Earlier today, you mentioned a citizen science project that you do. We love citizen science in the sustainability department. Can our students get involved in that?
For sure. I can email you with our flyer for the Christmas bird count coming up. And if you think any students might be interested or any staff members, we can hook you up with some of our zone leaders. And if we can't go out to the specific areas because our circle's pretty large, we can do our own bird count here at the Audubon Center on January 2nd. That's when our Christmas bird count's going to be. And part of our circle is the Audubon Center. So if you want to come out, we'll bird together, upload the species as well. And I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Jake. And thank you for everyone who attended today.